What is up, everybody? I hope you are having a fantastic evening. We got a great show for you tonight. Let's hit this intro and we'll be right back. All right, welcome back to Last Second Sports. We are giving you our take down to the last second. It's your boy Jesse, and I'm with my guy, So Real, Sunil. Sunil, what's up, my man?
So Jesse, we watch all of these Fox Sports shows, ESPN shows, and they always say we have a great show in store for you. And sometimes I'm like, that show wasn't that great. So
Not
I'm
so
gonna
much.
say we're gonna try our best.
Oh, wow.
But I
Way
don't
to
know
sell them
what's
short, bud.
gonna. I don't know
Hey, listen,
what's gonna
guys,
happen.
no reason to stick around. I guess we're going to try our best tonight.
Honesty, man. That's why we call him So Real, Sunil.
Yeah, perfect. This is a great start, man. Great start. Good. This will be Sunil's last time on the show, folks. We tried really hard, though. No, man. Hopefully everything is good with you. Actually, you know what? Shout out to my guy, So Real Sunil. Look at this. Sent me this bad boy.
Hey,
Look at that. Look at that. And
hopefully we
I'm
get another
debating,
year on that, bro.
I know we need another championship. Do we fill it up with something like some food coloring or something? We're talking about it. He's got one as well, so we're trying to figure it out. You guys let us know. Should we put some food coloring or something in it? I don't know. It's up to you guys. All right, listen. 49ers made a trade. We were supposed to do this show yesterday. I had to delay until today. But as a part of that show, one of the topics that you brought to the forefront was, should the 49ers trade for a wide receiver or a running back? And then the 49ers did just that. They traded for a wide receiver and Skyy Moore, basically a pick swap to get Skyy Moore. What I find interesting about Skyy Moore is he's younger than Ricky Pearsall by a month, and he's been in the league for like 3 years. So yes, there's potential there. He was a really good prospect coming out of college, second round pick, good kick returner, punt returner, but hasn't quite panned out for the Chiefs, a team that's been pretty desperate at the wide receiver position themselves. It's one of those things where you look at the Chiefs, they won these championships. They were desperate at the position. They weren't able to make it work with Mahomes and Reed. Clearly, Kyle Shanahan, like all coaches, are pretty arrogant. And I'm sure he's like, hey, I can make it work. They're using them wrong. So I'm curious to see how they do use them. But talk to me about what you think of the trade. And then do you think that they should be doing more other than just the Skyy Moore trade?
I like that. One, why we have to throw a shot at Kyle Shanahan just off the bat, being like,
Oh,
he
no,
thinks
it wasn't a shot. It was a love tap, really.
I got it.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, I think the Skyy Moore trade, it's for what, right? They just basically moved from the 6th round to the 7th round, and they get a player that, even if he doesn't pan out, you're not really losing much, right? The 49ers have done pretty well with 7th round draft picks. Insert, Juwan Jennings, insert obviously Brock Purdy. So for them, I think you don't lose a pick. You just, take a flyer on a receiver. The thing that is interesting to me, or the thing that really makes me just like whatever on this, is like, I mean, this is another guy that can't stay healthy, right? And the reason why you're getting receivers is because you can't find 3 healthy receivers to start right now. And Skyy Moore is a guy who the last few seasons hasn't been able to stay healthy enough to play a full season, right? So he's not like a huge stature type of receiver. He's like 5'10", a buck 95. Obviously has a lot of speed. He was brought in by the Kansas City Chiefs to replace, the Tyreek Hill kind of player and be that, speed guy for them. He obviously didn't pan out. And, when you have the quarterback like Patrick Mahomes and you have the offensive mind of Andy Reid, if they can't figure it out, it's it's hard to believe that he's gonna come here and just like have a resurgence or just be this great receiver. I'm fine with it just because you didn't pay much for it and it's another body to at least hopefully be good enough to be healthy enough to play receiver for the first 3 to 6 weeks. But do I think he's like a long-term solution? Probably not. Do I think that he's gonna wow people and do all these things? Probably not. But hey, if they could get anything out of him as a receiver and maybe even more as a kick returner, punt returner, I think it's worth the flyer just to see if you could get anything out of him. Maybe help on special teams, or best case scenario, at least be a over the top threat for Purdy till Ayuk gets healthy enough to play.
Yeah, absolutely. And I look at Sky. You're right. I mean, Sky Moore is a total flyer. There's no guarantee of what that he's going to do anything. Yeah, it's tough to envision a guy coming from literally the best situation you could be in as a receiver to this and be like, yeah, he's going to pan out. But maybe he will. And it is worth the flyer because you're swapping picks. You move back a little bit from the 6th to the 7th round, not the end of the world. He was a talented player coming out of college. I know a lot of people had high grades on him. Shout out to my guy David. He's very, very good at this, and he had a pretty high grade on him. So, the talent is there. It's always been there, but the health, to your point, and this, how does it translate to the NFL? The question now becomes, though, okay, that's great. They got Sky Moore, but Demarcus Robinson's now suspended for 3 games. That confirmation is out there. Ayuk from what I hear, he's pushing to still play week 1, but I don't think it's likely. And then you've got Jawan Jennings, which who knows, maybe they're comfortable with where he's at and he's going to play. But they have a bunch of question marks outside of that, Sky Moore included. Ricky Pearsall looks good, but he's still not a number 1 wide receiver. He's still a guy that you're going to have to get free releases, two-way goes. He just can't sit out there and be a number 1 receiver, take on press man and win that way. That's not how he's going to get it done. So the 49ers certainly have questions at the wide receiver position, at least until Robinson and Ayuk are back. So should they do more than what they've done? Should they bring in another free agent? Should they be making more trades? And not just at the receiver position, a position you brought up, which I agree with, is the running back position. Like, should they be acquiring more? Or is it possible that they will and they're just waiting for roster cutdowns too?
Yeah, I think they are going to be waiting for roster cutdowns, Jesse, because I personally think that this regime doesn't have a budget. There's no more money for them. And I know we have
Mm,
topics moving forward about kind of that, but I think that like this is another kind of data point that points to what I think is a very clear message that management and ownership have sent to this regime. And I guess to answer that question, it's like, what perspective are you coming from? If this
mm.
team was all in on winning a Super Bowl and that was the game, that was like the only goal, and it was like every layer of the organization was pushing for that, then absolutely you go out there, you try to bring in better talent, you try to sign some of these guys that are free agents out there that are bigger names that could come in and have made more of an impact recently in the league. uh but they're not doing that, right? They keep bringing in guys that are fringe practice squad players, guys that are like journeymen that are either trying to, hold on to the last strands that they have in the league. And to me, that's just showing kind of what I guess the philosophy is this season. And I don't think it's like Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch aren't trying to win it all, because I think they have to be able to keep their position with the team. But I do think that their hands are tied as far as how many resources they could use based off of what they've been given the last 9 seasons.
Well, I think that's a good segue into, another topic that you had brought up, which is, does Jed have a contingency plan? Because all that's great, but what is the conversation behind the scenes? Is it possible? I think there's like a couple different options here. Jed York either has no contingency and he's like, hey, you guys have free reign. Don't worry about this year. You got it. We're going to pull back money wise. We'll get right back into it next year. That's a possibility. Or it's, hey, we're constraining things. Also, you guys better win. That's a possibility. And then the last possibility is he's not saying anything to anybody. He's just doing what he's doing and he's going to see how the season goes and then pull the rug out possibly from underneath a Kyle Shanahan or a John Lynch. Like, I feel like those are the options. So which one is it? Because, like, based off of what you've seen this team do and how they're operating, what do you think Jed York is up to?
Yeah, and I mean, I think you laid out that's absolutely, I think, the three choices. But I think when you look at what, um, like I mentioned earlier, data points are there. You look at a few things, right? One, let's look at the contracts that have been signed. So the Brock Purdy contract, obviously, you see, okay, it's a lot of money. You think a lot of money invested, but when you look deeper into that contract, it's not the contract that you give to a player that you're like, for sure, this is my guy for the next 10 years, right? That's not the way it was structured. It's a very kind of, there's a way, if the team wants to move off of Brock Purdy, that they're able to move off of him without like the huge kind of burden that you see teams like Denver that had to go through when they moved off of Russell Wilson, or why Deshaun Watson is still a Cleveland Brown to this point, even though he hasn't been performing there, right?
They don't
There's
really
just
have
too
a
much.
choice.
They don't have a choice, right? So that isn't the way that the 49ers structured this contract. So to me, when you look at Kyle Shanahan, and Kyle Shanahan is saying, this is my guy, Brock Purdy is going to be my quarterback as long as I'm here. Well, then when the team gives the contract in a way that's like, well, we could get out of this after a year and not really be, it won't be that expensive for us, relatively speaking. To me, that's kind of goes hand in hand with that statement, right? If you had a lot of faith and belief in your coach that, hey, this is going to be my coach for the next 5 to 10 years, well, then if that coach is saying this is my guy for the till as long as I'm here, this is my quarterback, you would think that contract would show that confidence in that partnership. And I mean, I look at it, Jesse, and I'm like, look, I'm one of the biggest Kyle Shanahan fans. I come in here and defend him, and I believe in him, and I think he's a really great coach.
And a lot of
But
people get really mad at that.
yeah, but I'm not naive in the sense that, like, look, you can't give someone 10 years carte blanche, which he's gotten, right? They paid everybody he wanted to pay. They've it's not like they don't draft well, all that kind of stuff. But after 10 years, if you have zero Super Bowls, like just appearances, just deep playoff runs, those aren't enough to justify a decade with a team without any like championship. So to me, I think that Jed York is saving money. I think that he's not hitching his wagon to a quarterback that he can't move off of, because he is giving himself options that, look, if John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan don't get it done this year, I could still be appealing to a coach and a GM duo that could come in. They have all their draft picks. They have $45 million in cap space that they're going to roll over, and they could get out of they have a bridge quarterback, quote unquote, with Brock Purdy till they could figure out who their quarterback is, because they could move off of Brock Purdy at any time without really, really like putting the team's cap space in a bind. So to me, I think it's pretty clear just based off of those moves, Jesse, and the fact that they have a glaring need at running back depth. They have glaring need at wide receiver, and they haven't been going out and trying to get this really great talent. Even though there's names out there and there's receivers available out there, if they really were going all in and they were willing to spend the money or the draft capital or whatever the case may be, but they're not. So to me, it looks like, hey, I've given you everything the last 9 years. You have to show me that you can do it. This is the team that you developed, the team that you built. If you can't get it done, I'm not going to tie my hands to not be appealing to the next regime I bring in if you can't get it done with everything that I've given you.
Do you think that this is open communication? If that's and this is all speculation, right? So
Yeah.
based off of your criteria or your thought and what's happening here, do you feel like that's like open, or do you feel Jed is just kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out, going to see how it goes and then make a decision, and
I
they don't
think
necessarily know? Or
I think it would have to be open, Jesse, because I would find it hard to believe that John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan are just standing pat with this team with all the injuries that are going on. I'm sure they've gone to Jed and say, "Hey, can we get this guy, or can we make a trade for this guy?" And then he's vetoing it, right? I
let
don't
me let
think.
me let me clarify. I agree with that part. Do you think Jed has made it known, like, win this year, or something could happen?
I don't think so, just because I think that's a bad leadership style, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that you can say that to your coach and to your GM, because now there's already stress. They already have to have that internal stress from the fan base, from themselves, that they got to know that, hey, the writing's on the wall. But I don't think you go out there and you say, hey, it's this or nothing. But I do think that if Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch are smart they both are very smart. They've both been in the league for a long time. They have to know the way that this offseason is playing out, that it's not a it's not a owner that is like blank check like they've had pretty much the last 8-9 years.
Well, we can take it a layer deeper because Kyle Shanahan has had multiple interviews, and it seems like every chance he gets, he's tempering expectations on what this team is. Hey, we're going to try to get better throughout the season, and hopefully we make the playoffs. And once we're in, anything can happen. He's not, before it was very clear this team thought they were a Super Bowl winning team. That was the expectation. This year it's a very different tone than what we're used to seeing. I understand that because he's right. This isn't a Super Bowl caliber team. But at the same time, is that him covering his own butt too? Like, hey, if things don't go well here, it wasn't me again. You know what I mean? Like, can't blame old Kyle. I didn't have the pieces. So what do you think that's about?
Well, I mean, I think that's the chess game you play, right?
Yeah.
He has to do what's best in his situation to not only potentially negotiate with, ownership, but he also has to look appealing if this is his last job or his last year as the 49ers head coach, to the next ownership that, is looking at him and interviewing him and things of that nature, right? So I think that everybody's kind of politicking at this stage of the game, which is, the people that are really losing at the end of the day is the fan base, right? Because ultimately this is kind of that transitional period. But if I'm Jed York, I'm actually okay with the moves that he's making, right? Whatever excuses, like, hey, this isn't a championship level team right now, they don't have the right pieces, all that kind of stuff. At the end of the day, the buck stops with John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. This is the team that they have created over the last 9 years. I don't think that you can put it on Jed York. He's given them the blank check. He's given them, hey, go ahead and trade 3 first-round picks for Trey Lance. Go ahead and make, multiple players on this team the highest paid at their position at the time that they re-signed them. That he's given them everything that they wanted. It hasn't turned into a Super Bowl championship. So for him, it has to be smart business to not just have his hands tied, so that, the next hot, prospect coach out there, whether it be, is it Joe Brady?
Joe Brady.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Joe Brady, or, like the next, guy that comes up, like, this would be an appealing position for them, right? You have a lot of great pieces on defense that are locked in. You have, a quarterback who's, decent, that is on a team friendly contract. You have, star running back. Like, you have pieces there that is appealing. Plus, you have cap space, draft picks, so on and so forth, where you can kind of make the team your own. And dude, maybe it's not Joe Brady. Maybe there's a guy on the staff right now, and Robert Saleh, who has a great reputation and great, relationship with this ownership staff. Maybe they have the replacement right in house. When we know Robert Saleh and the players love Saleh, so that would be an easy transition if they end up moving off of Kyle Shanahan.
Ooh, I don't know. I don't know about that one. It makes logical sense. Robert Saleh, to me, what Robert Saleh represents, though, is that it's okay to move past Kyle Shanahan if things don't go well, because the fan base has become so enamored with Brock Purdy and Robert Saleh that I feel like the protection for Kyle Shanahan is less and less. This
Yeah.
year, it's the least it could possibly be. You're coming off of a losing season. You can't scapegoat a third defensive coordinator in a row, especially Robert Saleh, the great Robert Saleh. And we love Brock Purdy. So, hey, it's not Brock Purdy's fault. It's your fault. So I just feel like that coverage for the protection from the fan base of Kyle Shanahan is much less this year than what it's ever been because of those two things.
What I mean, you've been keeping tabs on this off season, and we've been covering these off seasons for the last 3 seasons for sure.
Mm-hmm.
How different is this based off of what you've seen from past off seasons, and what do you put your finger on as far as if there is a difference, you notice why that difference is?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think last year the way that everything went down, you hear the story about Kyle Shanahan last second running up the stairs to go stop John Lynch from trading Brandon Ayuk, and I got to have this player. And we know that Trent Williams is here because of Kyle Shanahan. We know that CMC is here because of Kyle Shanahan and those relationships. So watching those guys go and get extra money handed out to them, guaranteed money, and then not be able to play healthy, I think at some point Jed's like, well, listen, we've had as many losing seasons as we've had winning seasons here. We can't continue to shell out all this money. I do think that there is something to your point of, hey, I've got to make sure that this franchise stays attractive just in case. I don't think he wants to fire Kyle or John Lynch. I think he does genuinely like them both. I think he believes in both of them. But I think so much so that he's looking at us saying, hey, if you're truly the guy that I hired, Kyle, you should be able to do less with more for once. You've got the easy schedule, you got the quarterback, you got the coaching staff, you still have a lot of high paid players that you had to have. It should be enough for you. And so I think that's his mentality. And then we'll see what happens. I mean, I think that his decision can change based off of injuries or making the playoffs, not making the playoffs. I don't know. I don't know. And I don't necessarily think he has a contingency plan as far as a future coach or a replacement. But I do think, to your point, he is keeping this franchise ready to go. And it is in a really good spot. If a new coach and a new GM were to take over, much better spot than they were in a year ago. A year
Sure.
ago, somebody would have to come in and clean everything out. Now everything's cleaned out. Even the guys that they just resigned, it's like 2-year deals, 2-year deals, 2-year deals. There really is nobody that is on the books long term that they can't get out from. And so that does make it attractive to anybody. And on top of that, what Kyle has done at the very least, you can say what you want about Kyle and John, they've restored credibility back to this franchise. It wasn't there. Once Harbaugh left, that was it. That was it. It was not, there was nothing positive about this. The Chip Kellys and the Tom Zulas and those eras really put a bad mark on the 49ers. It wasn't the 49ers that everybody wanted. And now when you look at it, they're back to being, I think, number 4 most coveted franchise in the NFL. If they were to sell, they would be the 4th highest valued franchise. That was not the case before Kyle and John. So either way, they've built that back up, and that can be a blessing or a curse because now it's attractive enough to where Jed has also shown he's not a tyrant for an owner. He was starting to show that a little bit. You got rid of Harbaugh, you got rid of Balky right after you got rid of Harbaugh, who you kept Balky because they had a little bit of a rift, and now you got rid of them both, and then you're bringing in Tom Zula and Chip Kelly, and none of it worked. But now there's stability back in the franchise. And now I think coaches and GMs trust that Jed York is an owner that will open the pocketbooks, that will give them carte blanche, will give them a 5 or a 6 year contract and actually hold to that because he just did it. So the trust is there across the league. It makes the 49ers a very desirable job.
Yep, I agree. And I mean, it's a better situation than even what Kyle walked into, right? So like the cupboard isn't as
Way
bare
better.
as it was when this regime that's there took place. And look, they were able to turn it around within 3 years and get them into the Super Bowl. So there's expectations here. Obviously, the fan base has expectations of Super Bowl and bust. I just think that it's hard to justify keeping a coach on for 10 years without a Super Bowl chip, and I think that we're getting at that point, right? I can't have the same conversation at year as I was with Kyle Shanahan in year 4 and 5 than I can in year 9, right? So ultimately now it's put up or shut up, and I think that yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if one or both are gone at the end of this season. If it's not even just the playoffs, Jesse. It's like they have to be, competing for a Super Bowl. I honestly think if they don't make it or win a Super Bowl by the end of this year, I think one or both are gone.
I think. What do you think is more likely?
John Lynch gone.
Okay, perfect. I wanted to see if you thought it'd be both or what. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, I'm pretty sure that Lynch's contract's up at the end of this year. So if that's the case, do they want to extend him? He's also played a little bit of games as far as does he want to go back to the booth? That's
yeah,
easier money. He's very competitive, so he stuck around and extended his contract, but he knows he always has that out as well. So that's
sure.
available to him. So it could be one of those things where it's a mutual. It's like, hey, you know what? My contract's up. I don't want to necessarily come back. You don't want me back. Let's just cut ties right here. And then Kyle, I don't know if they promote somebody within or what have you, but I could see it happening for sure.
Yeah,
All right. You kind of touched on it a little bit. It's almost like you know what you're doing, and that you're teeing up topics. But what are the realistic expectations for this team? And it's funny because Coach and I have gone round and round on this. We have very different views of what the expectations should be for this team, and for different reasons. And I want to know what your what is a realistic expectation for this team with everything that we see going on? Do you feel like, I know that you said, hey, they should be competing for a Super Bowl. If not, I could see one of them gone. But is that realistic looking at this team and everything that's happened? What do you think the
yeah.
expectation should be?
And I think it's tough because it depends on what perspective you come through. So I'll put it this way, like based off of the players that are going to be rolling out, based off of what they're going to be having from week 1 to week 6 and throughout the season, right? Do I think
Mm,
that this team is a favorite to make the Super Bowl, win the Super Bowl from the NFC? I would say no. They're not, they wouldn't be in my top 4 from the NFC that are going to be coming out and winning the Super Bowl. With that being said, Jesse, the realistic expectations of this team with Kyle Shanahan as the coach, John Lynch, with them building this roster and developing this team for the past 9 seasons is Super Bowl. If you're not winning a Super Bowl, then we need to move off of you because we can't have a regime that's um, regressing when you haven't won it, right? So like a guy like you know Jim Harbaugh with the Ravens, right? There's a lot of people that are like, oh well, they haven't won in a long time and they haven't been able to get over the hump and all this kind of stuff. But he has a Super Bowl with that team where you can go through kind of ups and downs and you still know, okay, he's been able to get it done, so he buys time to continue to move forward. Same with some of these other coaches that may not have won in the same period as Kyle Shanahan has a won, but at least they have a Super Bowl to go to that kind of buys them, kind of like a benefit of the doubt is the word that I'm looking
yeah.
for. Kyle doesn't have that. So you can't regress and then expect that everybody is just like, okay, well, here's the keys back and, build it back up. Well, at your peak, you weren't a Super Bowl winning coach. So until you win a Super Bowl, like every year you got to win a Super Bowl. Like you have to get that monkey off your back. And I've been pretty consistent, right? I'm a big Andy Reid guy. The Eagles fired Andy Reid after 2 seasons of not making the playoffs, and and I've said that to me is like the level of, hey, when Kyle Shanahan doesn't win 2 Super Bowl or when doesn't make it to the playoffs back-to-back years, you fire him. But to me, I think you even have to put more on him because ultimately the way that this team is because of Lynch and Shanahan. So you can't keep blaming it on injuries. You can't keep blaming it on we don't have the right pieces. Well, you guys have been the ones that are drafting. This injury bug has been there your whole regime. Like you, and there's no Super Bowls, right? If they had won one of those years, the 2 times that they made it to the Super Bowl, I think that you give him grace. I can't give him grace in year 9, regardless of what the team kind of expectations are based off on paper. You have to get it done. And you mentioned it, like it's time for this regime to do more with less because you haven't been able to do more with everything, right? They've been years where they were the best roster, Jesse, hands down. Everybody looked at the
Yes.
49ers. They had the best roster and they weren't able to get it done at that time. So we can't give them just because they don't have the best roster now. Now they get the grace. No, you don't, because you couldn't even win it with the best roster. So now you just got to show that you could win it.
I mean, this is not the Shannon that I remember, Sunil. I love this is a tough stance. This is a tougher stance than I'm even taking. So again, coach and I very, very much disagree on this. He's looking at the roster saying this is not even a playoff roster. If they get to 10 wins, it's a miracle. And my point is what your point is, which is the hell it is. They better make the playoffs. That is the expectation. For me, make the playoffs with this roster. If they win a game, I think that would show that they did more than what this roster I think is capable of on paper. But if they don't make the playoffs with this schedule, with this coaching staff, with that quarterback, there's something seriously wrong. And at some point you've got to figure it out. So losing season, not making the playoffs twice in a row. If they don't make the playoffs this year, that would be 5 out of the 9 seasons. It's too far gone at that point. It just cannot happen. So your expectations are actually higher than mine,
Yeah.
but I think that we're coming at it from the same spot, which is Kyle, John, Brock, all the great players that you have and had to have, everything that we've done to this point, and then you add in that schedule, you have to be able to make it shake. And to me, that's at least playoffs. For you, it's a little bit more, but that has to be it. I don't I can't fathom how anybody has an expectation less than making the playoffs for this team. That should be the bare minimum.
Yeah, I think people can look at it and be like, I don't expect this team to make the playoffs. But when I say what are the expectations, I mean, what I guess my perspective is, what do they have to do that everybody comes back next season, right? That's what I mean by what the expectations are, right? And
Hmm.
for me, I think it has to be Super Bowl or bust, because ultimately, like, what in year 10, what's going to be different? Like, we know the system. You've had this talent. Like at this point, it's kind of like what is it that it's Kyle Shanahan fatigue, where it's like now we got to just give the keys to someone else and see if they could get better results. And I'm a Shanahan saying that I still think Kyle Shanahan will get hired the minute if Jed York fires him. I think he gets hired within a month, right? I think like somebody will pick him up in a heartbeat because of what he's been able to do to reignite the 49ers, like you mentioned earlier. But I do think that he is gonna be a coach that his team wins a Super Bowl, but ultimately, like, it might not be with the 49ers, which is unfortunate. But the team has to look out for what's the best for the team. And ultimately, like I said, you can't give a regime 10 years without anything to show for it.
Well, and I think the other thing to keep in mind here too is they were blessed with the schedule this year, but that's not the case every year. next year, by the way, the 49ers might not have CMC or Trent Williams on this roster. I think both of them being gone is a real possibility at their ages and injury history and all of that. So the talent could be depleted even more. And then to top it off, they play the AFC West and the NFC East. So it's not getting easier going
Right.
forward necessarily. This team isn't necessarily going to be better just because they have more money to spend. Like if they didn't hit on this draft class, and we'll see. But if they didn't hit on this draft class or last draft class, it's not getting the roster's not getting deeper. It's just not. You only have so
Yeah.
much money to play with. So it would be tough to believe that if they don't make the playoffs this year or make a run, whatever the expectation is that you have on them, that it's going to be a better situation next year based off of what I just laid out.
Sure.
I have a little bit of a surprise question for you because it's a player that I really should have talked about it when we talked about topic one, but I just kind of thought about it. And that's Jawan Jennings. We don't know exactly what's going on with him. We know that he's injured. We don't know how serious it is. We know that calf injuries often can lead to torn Achilles. So there's a concern there. We also know that he wants to get paid. And it seems as if the 49ers are not willing to spend any money right now. So what do we think's going on with Jawan Jennings? Like what are the thoughts there? What do we expect from him? Do we expect that he slow plays this injury because he didn't get paid and he's protecting himself? Do we expect he's back week 1? I mean, I know that this is a tough topic because we just don't know the detail of the injury, but this is a player that's very important to see how this season actually goes. I've kind of forgot about him a little bit because it's been so long, but with the wide receiver position depleted as much as it is, what would be your best guess as to what happens with Jawan Jennings? And when he does come back, do you think he has a new contract in hand?
Yeah, so I mean, you're right. We don't have all the details, so it's hard to say what would happen. But let's kind of play the options through from his perspective, right?
Yeah.
So let's say if he's really injured, or let's say that injury is actually what's keeping him off the field, because I think some people might think that no, he's just playing this and hamming it up so that whatever. But let's say it is a legit injury. Um, Especially for the wide receiver position, the way that they pop off of that, use that Achilles and things of that nature, like it's not smart for him to play if that's really what's going on. If there's Achilles tightness, which usually is, the Achilles tightness manifests or shows like a calf strain, right? When it's really the Achilles, that's the issue. So yeah, he should slow play it because ultimately, if he gets injured, then he's out for a season without a contract, right? So for him, that's not ideal. So if I'm him and I'm really injured, then I'm not coming out. Now, if I'm not injured, Jesse, and I can play, even if I'm not getting the money from the 49ers, I'm going out there because who else is Brock Purdy going to throw to? And how good am I going to look
Yeah.
to the next team that's going to be looking? Because I think after this season, is he an unrestricted free agent or does he still have a
Mm-hmm.
year?
Yeah, he's unrestricted.
Unrestricted. So it's like, what better situation do I have to be the focal point for at least half the season, right? Or at least 6 games, right? To be the number one option, number one receiver, to really get my numbers to where they need to be appealing if it's not the 49ers that try to re-sign me, but the next team that potentially is willing to give me a contract based off of what I can do. So like, to me, it behooves Jennings, if he can play, to play, because it's just a great situation for the first 6 weeks that he's going to be the focal point and really be able to get some really great fantasy numbers. Let's just put it that way, to like to earn that next contract. But if he's not on the field, Jesse, to me, that I think that he's probably really injured and he doesn't want to get hurt this season without guaranteed money over the next few years, because he might be out for a whole year if that Achilles pops, right? So that kind of, to me, is the conundrum that he's in. I think ultimately he has to look at it and be like, okay, if this team isn't going to pay me or give me that contract, if I'm healthy, be out on the field. But maybe he's really injured, man, and that's why he's not out there, because he's not going to go out there and play unless he has guaranteed money next season.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. He has to slow play this if he's truly hurt, and I believe that he is. I don't think that this is a contractual thing at all. I think he's genuinely hurt, and he does have to protect himself. And this is the tough part. He signed that 2-year deal last year. He had the restricted free agent tender, the offer. He didn't sign it. And then late in the offseason, he finally signed a 2-year deal. So they kind of worked around the tender offer. And a lot of fans look at it and say, well, listen, you signed a 2-year deal, just work out your deal and finish it. I get that, but you have to also understand that Jawan Jennings is like 28 years old. He's not young, and he's only had one really productive season. That was last year. You have to strike in this league while the iron is hot. You just do. And that also means you have to protect yourself. And this is the push and pull of running a franchise. Last year, they pulled way too much. They gave everybody the bag, and then everybody just kind of got injured and, maybe didn't play through things or what have you because they had that protection. But then the pull is, or the push is, whatever the opposite of what I just said, is that when you have players that you're not paying and you can't pay everybody, you can get a Charvarius Ward situation where he came out and flat out admitted, yes, the death of his daughter played a big factor in last season. But before that happened, he knew he wasn't getting re-signed, and he said he wasn't feeling it anymore. He's not going to put his body on the line because he knew that he could get paid elsewhere. So why put your body on the line for a team that doesn't want you going forward? And I think Jawan Jennings and his agent are definitely having those conversations. Like, you better be more than 100% healthy. There cannot be even a fraction of a chance that you tear your Achilles here or what have you. Pop your calf. It doesn't matter. He has to know that he can be healthy. Now, to your point, there is that carrot that is being dangled, which is he will be the number one guy. He's going to rack up a ton of numbers. We know that. He's a Brock Purdy safety blanket. So if he can play, he can certainly make the bag by doing so. But uh, these calf injuries slash Achilles injuries, they linger. They
Yeah.
always do. And again, we've seen it with Kevin Durant, Halliburton in the finals, Richard Sherman. All of these guys started with calf injuries and ended up popping their Achilles. So he has to be very, very careful because at his age, a popped Achilles is a death sentence. He's not going to ever get paid. And the way that his career has played out, because he was a late round draft pick, had to prove himself for years that he was even worthy to play, and then was never featured until last year. It's unfortunate, but his one chance to really get paid in this league is right now slash next year if he stays healthy. But that's it. That's his only chance, because then after that, you're 30 and you're a hired mercenary, and it's just the way that the league works. So it's now or
Yeah,
never
and,
for
and I
Jawan, and
and
it's
I
unfortunate.
wonder, has he done enough to get paid off of last season, right? I don't know. I don't know if a team is willing to give him big money if he doesn't play this season and show that he can do it in back-to-back years. So it's a tough situation. So yeah, I mean, I think I lean your way where that this is a genuine injury, because ultimately, to me, I think Jennings has to play if he really wants to get paid. He needs to show it, but like we're mentioning, man, that's a tough. We saw even CMC, man. He had the same type of calf soreness or whatever, and it held him out the whole year pretty much. So you know, I hope. I mean, Jennings is a fan favorite. He's the consummate professional. Plays hard every single down. He's what we want in our receivers, but I think that he's genuinely injured. And to your original question, like he might not be there at the beginning of the season, right? He might not be playing in the first half of the season. Like, he might not even play the season if that injury is as serious as it could be, right?
Yeah, it definitely complicates things for sure. And he's in a tough spot. The 49ers are in a tough spot. And I hope that he's able to play. I really like watching Juwan Jennings play football. I think he's a lot of fun. I think this team certainly needs him if they're going to make a bit of a run. I mean, my thought process was initially when he was still healthy and wanted to get paid, trade him. Like get something for him before it's too late. But now that he's here, it's like, well, I want him to play because the 49ers chances go way up if he's on the field, especially early on in the season. Like him or Skyy Moore. I don't know. It's pretty
Right.
easy decision, Juwan Jennings, right? So, all right, man. Offense or defense, which looks better? And really the question that I have for you is not only that, but what do you think is going to lead this team this year? Like, you can look at it now and say, all right, well, I think the offense looks better. But ultimately, when the season comes to an end, which unit is going to be the dominant unit? Is it going to be the offense or is it going to be the defense? And then, you can also throw in, hey, this one looks better now, but maybe I'm changing my mind because this one's shown a trajectory or this one has injuries or what have you. What are your thoughts on this team and how they're led here?
Yeah, man. I mean, I got to go with the history of this regime. When has the offense ever been better than the defense for this team? And if there is a time, it wasn't when they were winning. Let's just put it that way. So, like, to me, I think that the defense has been the focus. You could say that based off of just how they drafted. And to me, like, the better talent is on the defensive side. The youth is on the defensive side. So, I mean, it's tough to say which looks better at this point because we haven't seen all the
Preseason.
starters play and stuff like that. But based off of what I expect and what side of the ball I expect to lead this team, I think it's defense, and I don't really see how anybody would argue anything different.
Um, Gosh, I don't know. You're absolutely right about that, but for me, Sunil, this is the third year that I'm going in saying if this team is going to truly compete, like Super Bowl, win a Super Bowl, the offense has to be the catalyst because it, the last 2 years, for different reasons, you had a new defensive coordinator in Wilkes, and then obviously another new defensive coordinator last year in Sorensen. Both those scenarios, like Kyle is the seasoned vet coach. He has to be able to lead a better offense than a defense. And then this year, yes, they added Robert Sala, who we all trust in. But when you look at Trent Williams, Brock Purdy, CMC, George Kittle, to me, and then not only that, all of the Ayuk, the money you spent there, the first round pick in Pearsall, and Kyle Shanahan as the head coach slash offensive play caller of this team, I think if they're going to have a chance, the offense has to be better. And the other part that plays into this for me is that you've got a bunch of young guys on defense. I could see a scenario now where at the end of the season the defense comes on and they kind of take over. But I think for them to get through the season and to the point of making the playoffs, that offense has to be better. And I think that it should be based off of all that big money that is dumped into that side of the ball. The caveat to this, though, is these injuries are very real. They don't even really have a running back outside of CMC who can you trust that he at 29 is going to stay healthy all season. The one thing that we were concerned about, I guess Garendo came back today and fumbled 3 times, so there is that. But and he can't stay healthy. The one thing that we were worried about coming into this season was how contingent this team and offense was on CMC. And also the flip side of that is hey, they can't run him into the ground because of these injuries and his age. And it's almost as if they don't have a choice now.
Right.
What is the other option? Because you don't have anybody else you can rely on. So that does worry me. But man, this offense has to be the better unit. It just has to be. And there's a lot of young talent on the defense, but it's unproven talent. I think that there's a lot of injury potential on the offense, but the proven talent is certainly there. And to me, I think this offense is going to be the unit that leads this team this year.
That's interesting because most of your argument till that last sentence was this has to happen. It wasn't like this is going to happen. So I was gonna ask you till you summed it up the way you did. Like that's great. It's what should happen. But what do you expect to happen? And I'll put it this way, man. I would argue that the better talent has always been on the offense in a Kyle Shanahan regime,
It's true.
right? They've always had more money on the offensive side than the defensive side, outside of like Warner and Bosa, right? When in the 9 years, or let's say 8 years, because we don't know this season yet, has Kyle Shanahan's offense been better than the defense?
I want to say, well, I mean, okay, last year I'm pretty sure it was, but losing season to your point. God, I don't know. Let's look it up. I mean, let's not guess. 49ers here. There are answers to these questions. We can actually see this. All right. So last year, the offense ranked. Oh, come on. You guys used to be way better than this. Okay. The offense ranked 13th. We're gonna go by points too.
Okay,
Offense ranked 13th, defense was 29th, but that was a losing season. So you
right.
want winning seasons, right?
Yep.
Um,
Or
so
let's
the
just
year
go through each
prior,
season. Let's just say,
okay,
out of the 8 years, how many times
okay.
has the offense been better?
So last season was one.
Okay.
The season before when they went to the Super Bowl, they were both ranked third. So that's a tie. The season before, the defense was ranked first, the offense sixth. The season before that, the defense was ninth, the offense was 13th. The season before that, the defense was 17th, the offense was 21st. The season before that, the defense was eighth. So the first Super Bowl year, uh, the offense was second, the defense was eighth. And then the year before that, again, that was the first year, offense was better. So 4 out of the 9 years, but really the winning years outside of one was the defense. It was a
And I
defensive
think
led team.
that 1 year that they and I might be
I
mixing
think
up the
yards
years.
wise, I think yards wise in 2019 they might have actually been better on defense, but I like to go by points because
Yeah,
I don't know.
but and remind me if I'm wrong. I might be mixing up the Super Bowl years, but wasn't the year where it said the defense was eighth in
Mhm.
points, but like it was a big difference from the first half of the season to like the second half of the season, where they just went on a tear where they weren't letting any points over like 15 points a game for like half of a season, but they just struggled. No, I think that was the second Super Bowl run where they struggled in the first half of the
And then
season.
yeah.
Yeah, but
No, you're right. Yeah. It was actually, well, I'll say this though. The defense, yeah, I mean, it was kind of interesting actually against even in the playoffs, both of them really did their jobs until that Super Bowl and then neither did. So
yeah. So I mean, like, I guess maybe it's 4-4, but like, if this team is good, usually the defense is significantly better. So, or at least as good, if not better. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. We haven't seen that year that this team has been carried by the offense, because even that Super Bowl year that you said where the offense was ranked
they
higher.
were both super high ranked.
Exactly. And I don't think that we ever felt like this offense was carrying the team. I think it was more, if I remember the narrative, that this defense was putting them in situations that made the offense look better because they were getting a lot of turnovers and all that kind of stuff. So Jimmy G was dealing with like short fields and stuff like that that kind of made it look better than maybe it was.
No, that is actually a very fair point to where they I'm gonna look at the turnovers in a second, but I do know that I remember that year specifically, the average starting field position, they were number one by a
Mm-hmm.
wide margin as far as where their offense started. Let me see turnovers. Oh yeah, I mean, Listen to the amount of turnovers they force in these games. 4, 1, 2, 4. Every game they forced at least one, except for the very last game of the season. 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 1, 3, 4, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 3, 2. Like multiple turnovers. And 3 games with four forced turnovers. And in those games, they scored 31, 31, and then somehow lost, scoring only 24 points to the Seahawks. That was, by the way, the game that I knew that Jimmy G was not it. But yeah, so that's it. Yeah, they did. They gave him great starting field position. That does play here. It's very
Yeah.
important.
So, I mean, look, ultimately, we need this team. The best teams are the complementary teams, right? We need both to play very, very well. But if we're betting, I don't know, I don't know. Maybe we could do a gentleman's bet and say, like, I think the defense is going to be better. You're saying that the offense is going to be better, and then we could
Yeah.
see kind of what happens by the end of the season, and
Okay.
we could pay out that bet.
I like that. I like that. Okay. We'll have to keep track of it. That's easy. I get a tracker going. I like that because I'm sure that there's going to be more bets and disagreements because the season is just a couple weeks away, Sunil, and that means we're going to have to do a show where we make some predictions about this team. Record predictions. Do they win any awards? How does the season go? What derails it if it gets derailed? Like all of those things.
Who's
What
on the
rookies pan
field?
out? Who's on the field? Exactly. Everything is going to matter when we make those predictions. So that's only a couple weeks away. The season's right around the corner. So, Sunil, brother, as always, thank you so much for joining me. Everybody in the chat that contributed, very, very grateful that you guys are here as well. Without you, these shows don't happen. So much love to everybody. Stay blessed. The 49ers play the Fighting Trey Lances this weekend in the Chargers. So looking forward to that one. Everybody have a great night. Talk to you soon. Peace.